The transport shuttle descended through layers of artificial atmosphere, carrying Ambassador Owen Cross toward the most important meeting in human history. Below him, the Galactic Council's floating palace glittered like a jewel against the darkness of space. 12 towers rose from the central platform, each representing one of the ruling species that controlled known space. Owen had studied their histories during the 6-month journey from Earth. Conquerors, all of them. Species that had crushed resistance and built empires on the backs of weaker civilizations. The shuttle landed on a crystal platform. Guards in silver armor escorted Owen through corridors filled with floating data screens and holographic art. Everything gleamed with the wealth of 1,000 conquered worlds. They brought him to the council chamber, a vast circular room where the 12 representatives sat on elevated thrones. High Chancellor Drex occupied the highest seat. His species, the ruling caste, had dominated the galaxy for 3,000 years. Owen walked to the center of the chamber. No chair waited for him. They wanted him standing, looking up at them like a servant. He clasped his hands behind his back and met their eyes without flinching. Drex spoke first, his translator rendering the alien sounds into perfect English. Human Ambassador, your species has occupied 17 worlds in the past 2 centuries. You have built military installations and armed vessels. You have refused to submit your technology for council inspection. These actions violate galactic law. We were unaware of galactic law when we left Earth, Owen replied calmly. Nobody contacted us until 3 years ago. Ignorance is not innocence, another council member said. This one belonged to the Hask species, warriors who served as the council's military force. You have made yourselves a threat. The council offers you mercy. Submit now and your species will be preserved. A holographic document appeared in the air before Owen. He read through it quickly. The Servitor Protocol. Humanity would become a Class 7 labor species. All human worlds would be integrated into Council territory. All advanced technology would be confiscated. All military forces would be dissolved. Humans would be assigned to work details across the galaxy. Earth itself would be placed under direct Council supervision. You have 72 hours to accept, Drex said. If you refuse, the Council will enforce compliance by military action. We have pacified 47 rebellious species using these methods. All eventually saw reason. Owen looked at each council member in turn. He saw no compassion in their faces, no willingness to negotiate. They had made their decision before he arrived. This meeting was theater, a formality before conquest. Humanity respectfully declines, Owen said quietly. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted in their various languages, their translators creating a chaos of angry voices. Drex raised one hand and silence fell instantly. You understand what you are choosing? Drex asked. We have 3,000 warships, you have less than 100. We control 2,000 star systems. You control 17. This is not a war you can win. Perhaps not, Owen agreed. But it is a war we will fight. Humanity did not crawl out of caves and cross the stars just to become someone else's servants. We came seeking friends among the stars. If we found tyrants instead, so be it. We will not kneel. Drex's expression hardened. Your species has existed for what, 200,000 years? The Council has maintained order for 3 million. We have seen countless primitive species make the same proud declarations. All of them learned humility. You will too. Maybe, Owen said. Or maybe you will learn that some species would rather die free than live as slaves. The Council dismissed him. Guards escorted Owen back to his shuttle. As it lifted away from the palace, he activated his encrypted communicator. President David Lang appeared on the screen, broadcasting from Earth's command center. They rejected the negotiation, Lang asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. There was no negotiation to reject, Owen replied. They gave us an ultimatum, submit or be destroyed. I told them humanity's answer. Lang nodded slowly. Then it is time. I will address the planet. Get yourself somewhere safe, Owen. You have done everything we asked. The transmission ended. Owen's shuttle jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading for the nearest human outpost. Behind him, the Council Palace began mobilizing its war machine. On Earth, billions of people watched their screens as President Lang appeared in homes, workplaces, and public spaces across the planet. My fellow humans, Lang began. 3 years ago, we made first contact with an advanced galactic civilization. We hoped for friendship, for partnership among the stars. Instead, we found an empire that views all other species as either servants or obstacles. Today, the Galactic Council demanded our surrender. They gave us 72 hours to abandon our freedom, our worlds, and our future. I am here to tell you that we have refused. Murmurs of fear and excitement rippled through the crowds watching. War is coming, Lang continued. The Council commands thousands of warships and millions of soldiers. They have crushed rebellions before. They believe we will be easy to defeat. They are wrong. For 15 years since we first detected their transmissions and understood what they were, humanity has prepared. We have built in secret. We have planned for this day. We cannot promise victory. We can only promise that we will fight with everything we have. We will fight for our children, for our future, for the right to walk among the stars as free people. Lang paused, his voice growing stronger. The Council will arrive in days. When they come, they will find humanity ready. We do not seek this war, but we will not run from it. Stand together, stand strong. Humanity does not kneel. The transmission ended. Across human space, people looked to the sky. Fear touched every heart, but so did something else: determination. On the moon, inside the crater called Shackleton, massive bay doors began to open. Lights flickered to life in the darkness. Admiral Ruth Caldwell watched from the control center as the first ship emerged. Black hull, no markings, weapons bristling from every surface. Then another ship rose, and another. The Black Armada was waking up. General Commander Hask reviewed the fleet manifest for the third time. 500 warships from 8 different Council species. Enough firepower to sterilize a dozen planets. The Enforcement Armada had crushed every rebellion in the past 1,000 years. This mission would be no different. His tactical officer, a young Hask named Brel, approached with the latest intelligence report. Sir, we have confirmation that Earth possesses 83 military vessels. Most are patrol craft and system defense ships, nothing larger than a light cruiser. Hask nodded. The numbers were pathetic. Even if every human ship fought perfectly, they would be destroyed within hours. What about planetary defenses? Orbital platforms around their major worlds, missile batteries on their moons, standard primitive fortifications. Brel hesitated. Sir, there is one anomaly. Long-range scans detect unusual activity in their lunar regions, but we cannot get clear readings. Mining operations, probably, Hask said dismissively. Humans are an industrial species. They build and dig constantly. It means nothing. The Enforcement Armada prepared to jump. 500 ships aligned in perfect formation, their crews confident and their weapons charged. They had done this many times before. Soon, Earth would be just another notation in the Council's records, another primitive species brought to heel. Across human space, a very different preparation was underway. On Mars, Colony Director Ben Foster watched as civilian transports lifted from the surface. 3 million people were being evacuated to the inner system, to Earth and the fortified stations orbiting Venus. The people remaining behind were volunteers, engineers and soldiers who would operate the defense platforms. Foster had lived on Mars for 30 years. He had watched the red dunes transform into green valleys as terraforming slowly worked its magic. Now, war threatened to undo decades of progress, but he would not abandon his home without a fight. Director, his assistant called. The last transport is loading. You should be on it. Foster shook his head. I am staying. Someone needs to coordinate the defenses. But sir, if the council breaks through, then Mars will need leaders who chose to stand with their people, not leaders who ran. Foster placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. Get on that transport. Tell them what happened here. Make sure they remember. On Europa, the situation was even more desperate. The moon's cities existed under kilometers of ice, in the ocean beneath the frozen surface. Engineer Rachel Ward supervised the sealing of the city domes. If the council attacked, Europa's people would retreat into the deepest habitats and pray the ice protected them. How long can we survive sealed? Someone asked. Rachel checked her calculations. 6 months on stored supplies, maybe 8 if we ration strictly. And if the war lasts longer? Rachel had no answer for that. On Titan, former miner Carlos Ruiz loaded mining charges into jury-rigged launch tubes. The charges were designed to crack asteroids, not fight warships, but they would have to do. Titan had no military installations, no defense platforms, just people with tools and the will to resist. Deep in Earth's oceans, in a facility that did not appear on any public maps, Dr. Yuki Tanaka ran final diagnostics on humanity's greatest secret. Project Nightfall had consumed 15 years and resources that could have built 100 colonies. Some had called it paranoia, others called it prudent planning. Now, it was humanity's only hope. The first vessel of the Black Armada completed its activation sequence. 300 meters of experimental alloys and weapons that violated every council treaty. Tanaka had studied captured council technology for years, reverse engineering their shield systems and power cores. But she had also added something the council did not expect: human creativity, human willingness to take risks the council's rigid military would never approve. All systems green, her chief engineer reported. Reactor stable, weapons charged, stealth systems functional. Good, Tanaka said. Bring the rest online, all 300 ships. The engineer's eyes widened. All of them. Ma'am, if we activate the entire fleet, the power surge will be visible across half the solar system. Let them see, Tanaka replied. The council's fleet will arrive within hours. Hiding time is over. Admiral Ruth Caldwell arrived at the lunar facility as the Black Armada rose from its hidden bays. She had commanded Earth's defense forces for 5 years, always knowing this day might come. The visible fleet, the 83 ships the Council knew about, was already positioned around Mars. A sacrificial force, drawing the enemy's attention while the real weapon prepared. Status, Caldwell asked as she entered the command center. 287 ships fully operational, an officer reported. 13 still completing final checks. All will be ready before enemy arrival. Caldwell nodded. The Black Armada was not designed for honor combat or defensive operations. These ships existed for one purpose: to hurt the enemy so badly that they would think twice before attacking humanity again. Have we received the sabotage confirmations? She asked. A communications officer looked up from her station. Yes, Admiral. Our contacts in Council space report successful operations. Shield generators compromised. Navigation databases corrupted. Weapons systems experiencing mysterious delays. Nothing obvious enough to abort their attack, but enough to give us an advantage. For 15 years, humanity had quietly contacted subject species living under Council rule. The Volus, whose homeworld had been conquered 2 centuries ago. The Keld, genetically modified to be perfect servants. The Talus, forced to work Council mines and factories. Humanity had shared technology, knowledge, and hope. Now those investments were paying dividends. The Council thought they were attacking an isolated, primitive species. They had no idea that across their empire, thousands of oppressed workers were sabotaging the war machine from within. Time to enemy arrival, Caldwell asked. 4 hours, 17 minutes. Caldwell activated the fleet-wide communication system. 300 ships, Their crews waiting in the darkness heard her voice simultaneously. "This is Admiral Caldwell. In 4 hours, the Galactic Council will arrive expecting an easy victory. They will find the opposite. We cannot match their numbers. We cannot match their experience. But we have something they lack. We fight for our homes, our families, our freedom. They fight because they were ordered to. Remember your training, trust your ships. And when the moment comes, show them what humanity can do." She closed the channel and turned to her tactical officer. "Begin final positioning. When they arrive, I want them surrounded before they realize what is happening." The Black Armada moved into the shadows, waiting. Reality twisted and folded as 500 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Enforcement Armada materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system in perfect formation. General Commander Hask watched his tactical display populate with data. The third planet glowed blue and green, home to 8 billion humans who would soon learn the price of defiance. "Scan complete," Brell reported, detecting 81 human vessels clustered in defensive formation around the fourth planet. The 2 missing ships are likely on patrol. Hask studied the formation. The humans had positioned their entire fleet around Mars, probably hopping to delay the inevitable. It was a predictable strategy. Primitive species always made the same mistakes. "Deploy in Standard Encirclement Pattern 7, Hask ordered. "Advance at cruise speed. Open all communication frequencies for their surrender transmission." The Enforcement Armada began spreading out, forming a massive net that would surround the human fleet. Hask expected a message within minutes. The humans would see the overwhelming force arrayed against them and realize resistance was suicide. They would beg for mercy, perhaps ask for better terms than the original servitor protocol offered. Hask would refuse, of course. The Council had made its terms clear. But no transmission came. The human ship simply waited in silence. "Odd," Hask muttered. "They should be panicking by now." On the stealth carrier Defiant, hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars, Admiral Caldwell watched the Council fleet spread exactly as predicted. Humanity had captured several Council tactical manuals over the years through various means. Every move Hask made followed standard doctrine precisely. "They are using Formation 7, her tactical officer confirmed, just as projected." Caldwell allowed herself a small smile. Predictability was a weakness. The Council had been dominant for so long that they had stopped evolving, stopped adapting. Their military operated like a machine, efficient but inflexible. "All ships report ready," another officer said, "waiting for your command." Caldwell took a breath. Once she gave the order, there would be no going back. Humanity would commit itself to total war against an enemy that controlled half the galaxy. But the alternative was slavery. "Execute Nightfall Protocol," she said quietly. Across the solar system, 300 black ships activated their systems simultaneously. Advanced stealth fields that had kept them hidden collapsed. Engines flared to life. Weapons powered up. The Black Armada revealed itself not at Mars, not at Earth, but in 3 groups positioned around the Council fleet. Hask's display exploded with new contacts. Warnings blared through his command center. Ships were appearing everywhere, vessels his sensors had never detected. Impossible. The humans possessed stealth technology that rivaled the Council's best. "Count," he demanded. "How many?" Brell's hands shook as he worked his console. 297 contacts, sir. They have us surrounded." Hask felt ice in his chest. Surrounded. The word did not belong in this battle. He commanded 500 ships. The enemy was supposed to be outnumbered and terrified. "All ships combat formation," he ordered. "Raise shields and prepare to." The human fleet fired first. No warning, no challenge. No honor, they simply attacked with every weapon they possessed. Railgun rounds traveling at significant fractions of light speed tore through space. The Council ships had powerful shields, but many were still completing their defensive activation sequence. 3 ships died in the first seconds, their hulls punctured before protection could engage. Swarms of attack drones, millions of tiny hunter-killers, spread through the formation like locusts. Directed energy weapons, the type the Council had banned 5 centuries ago as excessively cruel, burned through armor and flesh alike. The Council fleet responded with overwhelming firepower. They possessed better shields, heavier weapons, more experience. Human ships began dying. The destroyer Valor took a direct hit from a plasma cannon and broke apart. The frigate Determined vanished in a nuclear fireball. The cruiser Steadfast lost half its crew to a radiation burst. But the surviving human ships kept fighting with tactics Hask had never encountered. They did not maintain formation. They did not follow predictable attack patterns. Instead, they moved like individual predators, each captain fighting their own battle. Captain David Park commanded the heavy cruiser Retribution. When his shields failed and his weapons ran dry, he did not retreat. Instead, he evacuated his crew to escape pods and rammed his ship directly into a Council dreadnought. Both vessels exploded, but the gap in the Council line allowed 3 other human ships to pour through and attack from an unexpected angle. "What are they doing?" Brel shouted over the chaos of battle. "They are destroying their own ships." "They are insane," Hask said, but doubt crept into his voice. The humans were not fighting like a military force. They were fighting like cornered animals, willing to sacrifice anything for victory. The battle raged for 6 brutal hours. Space filled with debris and radiation. Escape pods drifted among the wreckage as crews from both sides abandoned dying ships. The Council's superior technology gave them an advantage in direct combat, but human desperation and creativity balanced the equation. Lieutenant Commander Roy Evans kept the cruiser Guardian running long after it should have died. When the reactor began overheating, when every system showed critical failure, he stayed at his post and pushed the engines beyond all safety limits. The Guardian exploded in the middle of the Council formation, its detonation destroying 3 enemy cruisers that had clustered too close together. Throughout the battle, every human ship broadcast the same message on all frequencies. No matter which Council species tried to intercept or decode it, the translation was perfect. "You wanted to see how primitives fight. We have had 10,000 years of practice killing each other. We know every brutal trick, every cruel tactic, every desperate measure. We are not warriors. We are survivors. And we will make you pay for every meter of space you take from us." Finally, as the 8th hour of combat approached, Hask made a decision that no Council general had made in 500 years. He ordered a retreat. "Fall back to outer system," he commanded. "All ships tactical withdrawal." The surviving Council vessels, less than 300 now, broke formation and jumped to the edge of the solar system. Behind them, 94 human ships remained operational. Drifting through the debris field were the hulls of 206 Council warships and 203 human vessels. Caldwell watched the enemy retreat on her displays. They had won. Humanity had actually won, but the cost made her hands shake. 400,000 people dead, hundreds of thousands more wounded, and this was just the first battle. "Send recovery teams for the escape pods," she ordered. "Ours and theirs. We take prisoners and we treat them well. Show the galaxy that humans can be merciful even in victory." On Earth, billions watched the battle footage and wept. They had won, but victory tasted of ash and blood. News traveled faster than starships. Within days, every civilized world in the galaxy knew that the enforcement armada had retreated. The Council tried to suppress the information, but too many people had monitored the battle. Encrypted transmissions bounced between worlds. Smugglers carried data chips. Subject species whispered the impossible truth in their work camps and factories. The humans had won. On the mining world Talus 9, workers gathered in secret after their shift ended. The Council allowed them 2 hours of rest before the next work cycle began. Normally, They spent this time sleeping or tending to injuries from the brutal labor. Tonight, they huddled around a small device that displayed grainy footage from the Battle of Saul. Finn, a young Talus barely into adulthood, watched human ships ram Council dreadnoughts with his mouth open. "They actually did it," he whispered. "They fought back." An older worker, scarred from decades in the mines, shook his head. "They won one battle. The Council will send more ships. Earth will be crushed and we will still be slaves." But Finn saw something different in the footage. He saw possibility. For 300 years, his people had served the Council without question. They had forgotten that their ancestors once ruled their own world, made their own choices. The humans remembered. The humans refused to forget. "What if we fought too?" Finn asked. The gathered workers fell silent. Such words were dangerous. The Council had censors everywhere, informants among the subject species. To speak of rebellion meant death. But the old worker did not report Finn. Instead, he leaned closer and said, "With what? We have mining tools, not weapons. We have exhausted bodies, not armies." Finn pointed at the screen, where a human ship was using its own reactor as a bomb. They did not start with armies either. They started with the will to resist. The seed was planted, not just on Talus 9, but on dozens of worlds where subject species labored under Council rule. In the Galactic Council chamber, High Chancellor Drex convened an emergency session. The 12 ruling species gathered in person this time, no holographic representatives. The situation demanded their full attention. "Explain to me," Drex said, his voice dangerously calm, "how 500 warships failed to defeat 83 primitive vessels." General Commander Hask stood in the center of the chamber, stripped of his rank insignia. "They had 300 ships, not 83. Advanced stealth systems hid them from our sensors. They also possessed weapons we did not anticipate and tactics we had never encountered." "Tactics?" another council member spat. "You mean cowardice, ramming vessels, suicide attacks, weapons banned by civilized warfare." "They are not civilized," Hask said. "That is precisely why they are dangerous. They do not follow the rules. They do not value honor over victory. And they had help." Drex leaned forward. "Help from whom?" "Our investigation indicates sabotage throughout the fleet. Shield generators with microscopic flaws. Navigation systems with corrupted data. Weapons that took seconds longer to charge than they should. None of it obvious enough to detect before combat, but in the middle of battle, those seconds meant the difference between life and death." The council members looked at each other uneasily. Sabotage meant insiders. It meant their own subject species had turned against them. "Impossible," one council member declared. "The subject species are loyal. They understand that the council provides order and stability." "Perhaps they understand it differently than we believed," Drex said quietly. He turned back to Hask. "Your recommendation?" "Mobilize the Grand Fleet. 3,000 warships. Not an enforcement action, but a total war fleet. We sterilize Earth and any colony that resists. We make an example so devastating that no other species will ever dare to defy the Council again." Some council members nodded in agreement. Others looked uncertain. The cost of mobilizing the Grand Fleet was enormous, both in resources and in pulling military forces away from other duties. "And if other subject species rebel while our fleet is engaged at Earth?" someone asked. "Then we will crush them too," Drex said. "One world at a time if necessary. The Council has maintained order for 3 million years. We will not allow one primitive species to undo our civilization." The vote was called. The decision was unanimous. The Grand Fleet would be mobilized. On Earth, President Lang addressed humanity again. The celebration of their victory had lasted exactly 1 day before reality set in. The Council would return with more ships, more soldiers, more determination. "We have won a battle," Lang said, "but the war has only begun. Intelligence reports indicate the Council is mobilizing their grand fleet. 3,000 warships will arrive within 2 weeks. We cannot win that fight through conventional means." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the billions watching. But we are not alone anymore. Across the galaxy, subject species are waking up. They watched us fight. They watched us win. Now they are beginning to believe that resistance is possible. We have received messages from 17 different species, all asking the same question. How can we help? Lang's expression hardened. We will show them. Dr. Tanaka and our diplomatic corps are coordinating with resistance movements on 40 worlds. They cannot fight the Council's military directly, but they can disrupt it. They can sabotage infrastructure. They can slow the Grand Fleet's mobilization. Every day they buy us is another day to prepare. On the fortress world Bastion Prime, where the Grand Fleet was assembling, workers from the Keld species loaded supplies and performed maintenance on the massive warships. They moved slowly, carefully, as they had for generations. But now, hidden in their work, were small acts of defiance. A navigation crystal installed slightly off-center, a shield generator with one connection loose, ammunition stored in the wrong configuration, nothing that would be noticed during inspections, everything that would matter in combat. In the Council's shipyard's orbiting centrum, Volus technicians built the weapons that would be used against Earth. They followed their instructions precisely, except for tiny deviations in the manufacturing process, microscopic variations in alloy composition, timing chips that would drift from their specifications after extended use, quality control that looked perfect on the surface but contained hidden flaws. Owen Cross, still hidden in Centrum's underground levels, coordinated the resistance networks. He used encrypted channels and dead drops, moving information between worlds faster than the Council could intercept it. Neera, the tailless leader who had first contacted him, brought news from her people. "We have 3,000 volunteers ready. They work in every Council facility on Tailless 9. They await your instructions." "Tell them to be patient," Owen said. "The Grand Fleet will launch soon. When it does, when every Council eye is focused on Earth, that is when your people strike, not before." Neera nodded. "And what happens if Earth falls? What happens to us?" Owen met her eyes. "Then you will have proved that resistance is possible. Other species will remember. The Council's grip will weaken. Freedom will spread, even if humanity is not there to see it." 2 weeks remained before the Grand Fleet would arrive at Earth. Admiral Caldwell studied the tactical projection floating above her command table. 3,000 red dots represented the Grand Fleet assembling at Bastion Prime. 94 blue dots represented humanity's remaining functional warships. The math was brutally simple. Even with every advantage, humanity could not win a direct battle. "Tell me we have something," she said to Dr. Tanaka, who had joined her on the Defiant. Tanaka pulled up another display. "Our resistance contacts have confirmed successful sabotage across the Grand Fleet, but it will not be enough. When 3,000 ships attack together, small flaws will not save us." "Then we need to change the battlefield," Caldwell said. She manipulated the projection, zooming in on Earth's solar system. "We cannot meet them in open space. We need terrain, advantages, something that negates their numbers." Her tactical officer, Commander Lisa Hayes, highlighted several locations. "The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter contains millions of rocks, some the size of cities. We could position forces there, use the asteroids for cover and ambush tactics." "Not enough," Caldwell said. "They will simply spread out and surround us. We need something bigger." Tanaka's eyes widened. "The sun." Everyone in the command center turned to look at her. "Explain," Caldwell said. "We have been building solar collectors for years," Tanaka said, pulling up engineering schematics. "Satellites that harvest solar radiation for power. We have hundreds positioned around the sun. If we reconfigure them, we could focus solar radiation into concentrated beams, essentially turn our star into a weapon. Commander Hayes frowned. The energy requirements would be massive, and the aiming systems would need to be perfect. Any error and we hit our own ships. We have 2 weeks, Tanaka said. I can have my teams working around the clock. Caldwell nodded slowly. Do it, what else? Asteroids, another engineer suggested. Not for cover, as weapons. We have been mining the belt for decades. We have the equipment to move large rocks. If we position them along the Grand Fleet's approach vector and accelerate them to high speed, they become kinetic missiles. Expensive missiles, Hayes pointed out. The energy cost of moving an asteroid would power a city for months. We are fighting for survival, Caldwell said. Cost is irrelevant. Start moving asteroids. I want them scattered throughout the approach lanes, hidden among the natural debris. The planning continued for hours. Every officer contributed ideas, some brilliant, some desperate. They would set traps throughout the solar system. They would use gravity from planets to slingshot damaged ships to safety. They would mine empty space itself with nuclear devices on proximity triggers. It was not a battle plan. It was a slaughter box. They would turn humanity's home system into a killing field. On Mars, Ben Foster supervised the evacuation of the last civilians. Only soldiers and volunteers remained now, 3,000 people who would operate the defense platforms. Foster knew most of them would not survive, but no one complained. They understood what was at stake. A young soldier approached him, barely old enough to serve. Director Foster, my family is asking when I will evacuate. What should I tell them? Foster looked at the kid, seeing his own grandson in the young face. Tell them you are exactly where you need to be. Tell them you are proud to stand with Mars. The soldier nodded and walked away, trying to hide his fear. Foster wanted to call him back, to send him to safety, but they needed every person they had. On Talus 9, Finn and his fellow workers prepared for their own role in the coming war. They had no weapons, no ships, no hope of fighting the Council military directly, but they had numbers and they had position. Talus 9 processed rare elements essential for shield generators. If the mines stopped producing, if the refining centers went offline, the Council's ability to repair and replace damaged ships would be crippled. When the time comes, Finn told the gathered workers, we shut everything down. We destroy the equipment so they cannot simply restart it. Some of us will die. The Council will punish this rebellion severely, but our children might live free. The workers voted. 3,000 raised their hands, not everyone but enough. Similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. The Keld, who maintained the Council's infrastructure, prepared to sabotage power grids and communication networks. The Volus, who manufactured weapons and ships, readied themselves to contaminate production lines. The Rin, whose people served as translators and administrators, gathered intelligence and prepared to share it with Earth. It was not an organized rebellion. No central command coordinated the actions, but millions of individuals across the galaxy made the same choice. They would resist. On Bastion Prime, High Chancellor Drex personally inspected the Grand Fleet. 3,000 warships filled the space around the fortress world, the largest military force assembled in 5 centuries. Each ship had been inspected, tested, and certified ready for combat. This fleet could conquer half the galaxy, Drex told his military advisors. Against one primitive world, it is unstoppable. Earth has surprised us before, one advisor cautioned. Drex dismissed the concern with a wave. They ambushed an enforcement fleet. This is different. We are prepared for their tricks. We will approach cautiously, scan thoroughly, and advance in strength. No stealth ships will catch us unprepared this time. The Grand Fleet prepared to depart. In the command ship Eternal Order, Drex settled into his chair and gave the order. 3,000 ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading toward Earth. The journey would take 2 days. On Earth, President Lang gave what might be his final address to humanity. The Grand Fleet has departed Bastion Prime. They will arrive in 48 hours. We have done everything we can to prepare. Our ships are ready. Our traps are set. Our allies across the galaxy stand with us in spirit and many in action. We face an empire that has dominated for 3 million years, but we are humanity. We have climbed from caves to stars. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that consumed continents. We will survive this too. He paused, his voice growing softer. If we fall fighting. If we die free. And if we win, we will build a galaxy where no species ever has to make this choice again. Stand strong. Stand together. Humanity does not kneel. Across human space, people prepared for the end. Some prayed. Some spent time with loved ones. Some simply looked at the stars and remembered better days. Admiral Caldwell sat alone in her quarters aboard the Defiant, writing letters she hoped would never need to be delivered. To her daughter on Europa. To her son in the Mars defenses. To the families of the 400,000 who had already died. When she finished, she sealed the letters and returned to the command center. The crew was waiting, looking to her for strength. The Grand Fleet arrives in 46 hours, she told them. We have fought impossible odds before. We will do it again. All ships final system checks. This is not a drill. This is not a simulation. When they arrive, we will show them that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our numbers. It is our refusal to surrender, no matter the cost. The clock counted down toward humanity's final stand. Reality folded and 3,000 warships emerged at the edge of Earth's solar system. The Grand Fleet materialized in perfect formation, shields already active, weapons charged, sensors scanning in all directions. High Chancellor Drex had learned from Hask's failure. No surprises this time. Full sensor sweep, Drex commanded from the bridge of eternal order. I want every asteroid, every piece of debris, every floating rock identified and tracked. The sensor officer worked quickly, detecting 93 human vessels clustered near the third planet. No stealth signatures detected. Wait, sir, I am picking up unusual readings throughout the system. Elaborate, Drex said. Asteroids along our approach vector, hundreds of them, but their positions do not match natural orbital mechanics. They have been moved. Drex studied the tactical display. The humans had turned their asteroid belt into a minefield. Clever but easily countered. Navigation, plot a course that avoids the suspicious asteroids. Weapons, prepare to destroy any that come too close. All ships, advance in echelon formation. The Grand Fleet began moving deeper into the system, advancing cautiously. Drex watched the human ships near Earth. They maintained formation, not attacking, not fleeing, waiting. Admiral Caldwell watched the enemy fleet advance on her displays. They were being careful, scanning everything, avoiding the obvious traps. Good. The obvious traps were designed to be avoided. The real weapons were hidden in plain sight. Solar collectors charged, Dr. Tanaka reported from the engineering station, waiting for optimal positioning. Kinetic missiles ready, another officer said. Asteroids accelerating on schedule. Caldwell waited. The Grand Fleet needed to commit fully, to push deep enough into the system that retreat would be difficult. She watched them approach Mars, watched them spread their formation wide to avoid the prepared asteroids. Now, she said quietly. Throughout the solar system, hundreds of satellites that had been positioned around the sun for years suddenly reconfigured. Mirrors and lenses adjusted angles. Solar radiation, normally harvested for power, was focused into concentrated beams. Streams of intense light crossed millions of kilometers in seconds and struck the Grand Fleet's rear elements. The Council ships had powerful shields designed to handle weapons fire, but these were not weapons in the traditional sense. This was the raw fury of a star. Shields overloaded, hulls superheated, Ships at the back of the formation died instantly, their crews cooked alive before they understood what was happening. At the same moment, the asteroid's humanity had positioned began firing their concealed engines. They accelerated toward the Grand Fleet, not from the sides where defenses were strongest, but from angles the Council had dismissed as safe. Hundreds of massive rocks, each weighing millions of tons, moving at thousands of kilometers per hour. The Grand Fleet's point defense systems engaged, destroying many of the asteroids. But there were too many. Rocks the size of buildings smashed through shields and crushed warships like toys. Debris spread in expanding clouds, creating hazards for other Council vessels. "All ships evasive action," Drex shouted. "Redirect power to aft shields, return fire on those satellites." The Grand Fleet began shooting back, destroying the solar collectors one by one. But the damage was done. Nearly 200 ships had died in the first few minutes of combat. The careful formation fractured as captains took individual action to avoid the chaos. That was when the Black Armada struck. 93 human ships that had been waiting near Earth suddenly activated experimental jump drives. They appeared inside the Council formation, materializing among the confused enemy vessels. Human ships opened fire at point-blank range. Railguns punched through shields before they could adjust to the new threat vectors. Nuclear missiles found targets before point defenses could lock on. The Council fleet's numerical advantage became a liability as ships collided with each other trying to maneuver in the tight quarters. Captain Allison Reed commanded the heavy cruiser Liberator. She had said goodbye to her children hours ago. Now she threw her ship directly into the enemy formation, weapons blazing. When a Council dreadnought locked onto her, she did not try to escape. Instead, she rammed her ship into its bridge section. The mutual destruction opened a gap in the Council line. Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds, subject species watched the battle unfold through stolen transmissions. They saw humanity fighting impossible odds again, and they acted. On Talos 9, Finn and 3,000 workers simultaneously destroyed their mining equipment. Explosions rippled through the refining centers. Production stopped. Council overseers tried to restore order, but the workers fought back with tools and bare hands. They could not win, but they could disrupt. On Centrum, Volus technicians sabotaged the power grid. Half the planet went dark. Communications failed. The Council's ability to coordinate their empire collapsed. On Bastion Prime, Keld's servants seized control of the shipyards. They could not hold them long, but every minute delayed reinforcements from reaching Earth. The rebellions were uncoordinated, doomed to fail individually. But together, they spread the Council's forces thin. Every soldier sent to crush a rebellion was a soldier not available to fight at Earth. In the Battle of Sol, the fighting reached brutal intensity. The Grand Fleet's superior numbers were telling. Human ships died by the dozens, but they took enemy vessels with them. Lieutenant Commander Roy Evans' cruiser Guardian, already crippled, detonated its reactor in the middle of the enemy formation. The explosion destroyed 6 Council warships. On Mars, Ben Foster watched from the defense platforms as enemy ships approached. The platforms fired everything they had, missiles and railguns and lasers. They destroyed 5 Council vessels before the return fire came. Foster died at his post when a plasma strike vaporized the command center. The battle raged for 12 hours. Space became a graveyard of destroyed ships and drifting bodies. Escape pods from both sides scattered through the debris field, their occupants praying for rescue. Finally, as casualties mounted beyond acceptable levels, Drex made a decision that would echo through history. All ships withdraw, full retreat. The surviving Council vessels, less than 1,000 now, jumped to faster-than-light travel and fled the system. Behind them, fewer than 30 human ships remained operational, bleeding atmosphere and radiation. Admiral Caldwell sat in her damaged command center, surrounded by dead consoles and injured crew. They had won. Humanity had actually won, but the cost made her want to weep. President Lang addressed what remained of humanity. The Council has retreated. Earth stands free. We lost over 400,000 souls in this battle. Millions more across the galaxy died fighting for freedom. We will remember every single one. 6 months later, the first Free Species Congress convened on Earth. 27 species sent representatives. The Council still existed, controlling their core worlds, but their empire was fragmenting. Subject species demanded freedom. Some achieved it peacefully. Others fought. Humanity helped where it could. Owen Cross stood before a memorial wall listing names of the dead. A young Talus, recently freed from the mines, approached him. Was it worth it, all those deaths? Cross looked at the alien, at the hope in eyes that had only known oppression. Yes, because the alternative was dying on our knees. Humanity does not kneel, and now neither do you. In orbit above Earth, the Black Armada was being rebuilt, not as weapons of war but as ships of protection. The galaxy was changing, freedom was spreading, and humanity would ensure it continued spreading, one star system at a time.